Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to the Future of Hybrid Workforce webinar organized by the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry in partnership with Nobi. We have an amazing group of panelists who are experts and practitioners for today's session, and our very own board director of SICKI, Mr. Tushar Doshi, will start off the session with his opening remarks. Just before he starts, a little bit about Mr. Tushar. Mr. Tushar embarked on his entrepreneurial venture under the name of Tushif International. Under this company, Mr. Doshi began his trading business in agricultural commodities and chemicals, computer peripherals, and was among the first to introduce virtual advertising. In 2003, Mr. Doshi focused on developing a unique and patented art form called three-dimensional holographic sculptures. He created a global market for these artworks. In 2016, Mr. Doshi sold this part of the business to his local Indonesian director. Since mid-2016, Mr. Doshi has been an independent director on the board of directors at DigiLife Technologies, SGX-listed company. Mr. Doshi became a global independent distributor for an American manufacturer in stem cell lift technology, DNA reparation, anti-aging, and longevity space of the health and wellness industry. He's also working in the professional and personal development areas to assist individual and corporate clients to discover and improve their strengths for better success. Mr. Doshi is involved in the trading of physical crude oil and various downstream products. From 2019, Mr. Doshi serves as an advisor to Darwin Travel Tech, a Mumbai-based travel technology startup, which is enabling service providers and travel agents to offer real-time travel packages to travelers for their personal and business trips. He is also an investor director with iTech Jenny Global Private Limited, a Singapore-based startup developing AI ML-powered solutions for product development, DevOps, and IT teams. With that, I would now like to invite Mr. Tushar Doshi to open today's webinar. Mr. Tushar, please.
Thank you, Gauri, for a very long introduction. But, is my audio coming through all right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So, hello everybody and a very good afternoon. On behalf of Dr. T. Chandru, Chairman of the Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, SICKI as we call it, and Nobi, we've partnered to present the future of hybrid workforce. During this difficult period, businesses need to develop a plan to face challenges and also looking towards the future. This topic is very essential, and I'm pleased and humbled to open the webinar. Since 1924, SICKI has served the needs of local Indian businesses as well as the wider business community. Members of SICKI are provided with insights, connections, support services to help them compete in the global marketplace. Business networking sessions, seminars, webinars, trade matching, job matching, and skills training are among the services that SICKI provides. In Singapore, SICKI hopes to serve as a gateway to opportunities for Indian businesses, helping both local and international companies meet their potential. We offer customized information services for SMEs through our SME Center. A globalization division for local companies has also been established by SICKI. With such services, SICKI hopes to further its members' interests. As the title of today's webinar suggests, we will discuss the future of workplaces and how contingent workers are being managed in Singapore. COVID-19 has challenged companies to consider their social responsibility even more so and rethink their options moving forward. With the adoption of digital and automation technologies, businesses have been moving drastically faster than in the past. There is a huge shift to digital infrastructure across every industry, including retail, entertainment, medicine. Companies are scrambling to implement digital systems to meet this challenge. Although the pandemic efforts are receding, consumer behavior and business models will likely remain transformed. Though perhaps not to the same extent as during the crisis, technology promises to enhance productivity, efficiency, and innovation but may also cause an uneven economic recovery, with rising economic inequality among workers and uneven consumer outcome based on age and income levels, and a growing gap between the best and the rest of the economy. With remote work, less travel, and lightning quick strategic pivots, we've identified new capabilities as well as new priorities. To thrive, we emerge from the pandemic. We must listen to what our employees, our customers, and our organizations really need. We have an opportunity to realize something very different here. As we reset our workplaces and create places where we thrive, workplaces are viewed as powerful places for businesses and people alike. So we may question what they can offer in the future. Having said that, let me take this opportunity to welcome our fabulous panel of speakers today to our webinar. I'd like to introduce Su Yang Kang, co-founder of Nobi, who is going to be the webinar's moderator. Welcome, Su Yang. She is a serial tech entrepreneur, CEO coach, TEDx speaker, Harvard Business School graduate, former McKinsey consultant, and was nominated by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader. Across the US, Asia, Europe, Australia, Middle East, and Africa, Su Yang is a highly sought after speaker on topics such as digital transformation, design, innovation, leadership, culture, strategy, education, edtech, and entrepreneurship. We're indeed fortunate to have her moderate this panel. Along with her, NC Prakash is the Vice President, Human Resource, Asia Pacific at Roth and Schwarz, one of Germany's top 100 employers and a leader in the field of electronic testing, measurement, wireless communication, broadcasting, media, radio tracking, and secure communications. In addition, he is a member of the board of directors for Roth and Schwarz in Korea, India, and Thailand. Welcome, Prakash.
Thank you.
During the last 15 years, he has established the company's manpower expansion in the regional headquarters in Singapore and the region, and established the leadership development, organizational development, and succession planning initiatives. He also supports charitable causes in Singapore and the region and coaches young leaders. There were also awards for coach leadership and for his charitable work. One of the top 50 global HR tech minds, World HRD Congress, Prakash has won many HR awards during his career. Composing music and experimenting with his many instruments is his favorite hobby. Welcome, Prakash.
Thank you very much.
Adrian Tan is also with us today. He is the future of work strategist at IHRP, helping Singapore companies prepare for the future of works by using thought leadership and being the voice of leading topics and megatrends in human resource capital development. He is a serial entrepreneur in the recruitment, career search, and HR consultancy spaces, which has led to 2 HR Vendor of the Year awards, the SHRI HR Award, HR Entrepreneur Award, and the Global Recruiters Best Marketing Awards. Welcome, Adrian. The author of a popular blog on the future of work and the creator of the Singapore HR Tech Market Map. Adrian is named one of AIRH's top global influencers in HR technology. On his podcast, The Adrian Tan Show, he interviews future of work enablers. And last but not least, we have Skandar Raja Chandra, who works as a learning consultant for Nobi. He manages a portfolio of large enterprise accounts and clients in Asia, Europe, and Africa. By helping clients extend, digitize, and enhance their training programs, Skandar has a proven record of successfully implementing Digital 2.0. Welcome, Skandar. As a former university faculty member and current executive at Nobi, Skandar brings to his role an extensive knowledge of helping organizations develop digital transformation. Besides speaking to corporate trainers and directors, Skandar has conducted workshops and hackathons for thousands of people in Asia and Europe on the topic of mobile and micro-learning. I'd like to take this opportunity to mention that Peter Shepard, Global Head of Learning Ecosystem from Ericsson, sends his apologies and he's unable to join us today, but he sends his best wishes to all the panelists and the participants. With that, I'd like to invite Su Yang to initiate the session and take us forward. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Su Yang. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tushar, for those wonderful, very positive introductions. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. Thank you, of course, Johnson, for making this all happen. And I'm delighted to spend some time here with some amazing fellow panelists and speakers, Prakash, Skandar, and Adrian. So let's just kick things off and get started. We're going to be having a dialogue today about the kind of this future of this hybrid workforce and what that means. So I think what I'll do is invite each one to just share, first of all, why did you choose and decide to be on this panel today? And what are kind of your initial thoughts when you heard the topic? So maybe I'll start with Prakash.
Well, in my case, I think it's because Johnson promised me, lunch, dinner, or tea. So this prospect was quite good, especially with the recovery, the so-called recovery that's pending, right, Johnson? With the smile, it's confirmed, yeah. So, yeah, basically
that's always a very important, motivator.
Yeah. Basically, that he asked if I could join in, and I said, I could fit in the date, so I was happy to join.
Thanks, Prakash.
Thank you, Prakash.
I think for myself, it's really happy to share with the audience out there, people who is keen to learn more about hybrid work, because I think even though we've been in this pandemic for almost 2 years, many companies still struggle to make it work well for them. So I've seen many companies try, it didn't work, they try again, and all these best practices, good learnings, I hope to share with the audience today.
That'll be great. Yep.
Thank you. Fantastic. Skandar.
Well, I was firstly excited just to be part of this panel of, fantastic experience here, and I'd love to be a part of a conversation. But I think the second reason for me is I think I've been very passionate about working in such an environment ever since I entered the workforce. And I've been lucky to, of course, be part of such an environment way before the pandemic already. So I think there's been a lot of learnings for us as a company that has been doing this for a very, very long time, and we've improved along the way. So obviously, when I was given this opportunity, I think it was an ideal place for me to be able to come and listen to how others are doing it, and then maybe even share some of the best practices that has worked really well for us. Yeah, that's basically my reason.
Thanks, Skandar. And, I think what's really interesting about today's conversation is we have really a diverse mix of panelists, from startup to larger companies to practitioners and experts. And, I think for me, I think the reason why I love this topic is we have been talking about remote work, hybrid workforce for quite a long time. But obviously COVID happened and then boom, it became a reality. And all of a sudden we have no choice. Whereas we had a choice. And I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to go back to what it was before the pandemic. No matter what, there'll be some combination of hybrid and remote work. And I think it's up to each company and each team to figure out what's best for them. So I think today's conversation is really going to be about, a lot of kind of what we're seeing in the market, some of the pain points. And we want this to be a dialogue. There are, a lot of people here who are participating. And I know you share a lot of rich experiences and questions. So we're just going to chat a little bit, here to make sure we get the best from our speakers, but want to invite the participants to also ask your questions so that we can have a dialogue. And just in terms of the topic, to narrow it down, because hybrid is such a big word, we can talk about really flexi work, kind of remote work, deskless workforce, and all these different topics. I think we're going to focus a lot more on kind of the remote working kind of part of hybrid workforces, but we still no topics off limits, right? So we can invite questions around other aspects of a flexible workforce. So with that, just to kick things off, I think you mentioned, Adrian, a few best practices, right? Around what are some of the things in terms of trends you're seeing, and and why is it so difficult? Where in those examples, especially, I always love learning from examples that don't work, right? So what are some of the examples that you've seen of why it's not working? What have they tried, and what are you seeing and hearing in the market?
I think the key thing that people try and didn't work, of course, is to maintain the same mindset. And that means by having the same way of measuring work. Because for the longest time, since industrial age, people have been measuring work based on input. So the time that you come to work, how long do you go for lunch? Did you leave earlier than your boss? Those kind of stuff, which honestly in today's context is very frivolous. And when everyone moved to hybrid, there's really no way for you to measure. And of course, what would such management do? Okay, maybe I should install tracker, keystroke tracker, so I can monitor them. I even heard of a story where the company insists everyone turn on their Zoom from 9 to 6. So that they didn't put it as a pretext to monitor them, but it's for, well, according to the reason, to create the sense of connectedness, because since we are all so far away. I mean, honestly, it's BS lah. You just want to monitor people in front of the camera. So you're seeing a lot of things like this. And of course, how would you feel as an employee? Do you like to be monitored? Do you like people to look over your shoulder? Nobody like that. But still, for micromanagers, for people who are very input-based, when COVID first hit, what they do is they double down. Instead of monitoring you 2 times, monitor you 4 times. Instead of just looking at you, observing you, or based on your green light status on your Slack, on your team, I will make sure that you turn on your Zoom. So things like that. And of course, that created a lot of friction, a lot of unhappiness. People start to leave. And that's what I've been seeing a lot in the market. And of course, on the other spectrum, you have the good, the best practices. You have companies that realize from day one, okay, I cannot micromanage, I cannot look at input based, I will go output based. And that is where they have to really reinvent the entire conversation on performance. What exactly does it mean? As long as you can do your work, you can provide your work, okay, that's good enough. You can do whatever you want. You can go and watch Netflix for 4 hours, doesn't matter, because work is done. It's done, it's done. So it's very unlike the kind of situation which I honestly first got to know when I got into my military service, where the senior would tell you, don't do things so fast. Because the faster you complete them, the more work there is for you to work on. So that unfortunately is still very prevalent in today's context. So I think that's the key thing that people have to look away from. You really need to take a more output approach rather than an input approach.
Absolutely. Skanda, I know you have some views on this as well, especially because there's a cultural element to this conversation as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 100% right on the culture piece, right? Because I think a lot of the people that I've been talking to, a lot of partners, clients, companies, I think culture is a big, big question mark. At the end of the day, culture is basically a common set of practices. And that's something that the truth is that you develop a certain kind of culture when you work in the same environment. And now with the hybrid, with the whole hybrid idea, how does that happen? How do you perpetuate that same type of culture and that same intensity that you used to do before? So that's definitely something that keeps coming up. I think something that's worked for us, for us as in where I work at Nobi, has been the fact that we've always been focused on objectives and goals rather than processes. And I think that itself permeates a certain kind of culture. When you're not worried about how you go about doing certain things, and you focus on the actual output and how well you come out with that output, I think that changes everything. And that has been something that's been consistent from the get-go. So I think that also is an additional element, which is consistent messaging, consistent clarity and communication. I've heard of cases where a company has bought into the whole hybrid workplace, but they are incentivizing employees to come in to work, right? The number of work days. There's these hidden incentives for people who actually come in. Again, there's a mixed message there. So I think that's another thing that has helped us. That's something that's definitely useful in terms of clarity and communication clarity in messaging from the get-go.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think we like to say a lot, and this may come from the fact that we're a global company. We have employees in Europe, US, Asia, and multiple countries, multiple backgrounds. So you kind of have to figure out what is a global culture and a global set of norms. And because I've not met maybe more than half of the team ever in person, and since the beginning. And so how do you build trust in a hybrid environment? I think has been obviously a challenge. There are definitely challenges associated with that, but a lot of benefits. And one of the jokes that we would say is, we don't care if you're on a beach drinking a Mai Tai. And in fact, if you are, like, have one for me too, as long as the work gets done. And so I'm curious, Prakash, when you hear this conversation in your context, what does your context look like?
Yeah, I think thanks for that question. And I like what I heard from Skanda and the findings that Adrian mentioned. I think for Roda InShots, the company that I'm in, and people and innovation, these two are critical. And then if you look at innovation, because a company like us, which is everything that we do are created by us. We are the pioneers in the field of test and measurement, wireless test and measurement. Probably almost most of the mobile devices are tested by Roda InShots, and then innovation is a very big thing. I mean, not just for the R&D team, but the people, process innovation and all that. Now, if you then want to do that kind of work, and if you have controls, mechanisms, nothing is going to happen, right? So that is some foundation that we set up very early. Like, for example, we find that everyone using whatever they want to do. I actually have, for example, I'm right now in office, and on one of our floors is our R&D team, and one of my R&D guys said, can I play some music, because I don't want to just do this. I want to play some keyboards and compose some music. So I said, okay, sure, do it, but the colleagues later came back and told me, the guy doesn't play so well, can you do something about it? So I said, yeah. I went back to him. I said, continue playing, but put on your headphones, why? Because that's the whole idea. I mean, and another guy has a guitar and all of that. Having great goals and great ideas, great innovation ideas, and then getting it done is getting it done is the most important thing. Then you don't worry so much about being monitored and you micro manage your people and all of that, because if you have that, and then you have check-ins, but polite check-ins, and it's in our culture, it's not weekly Monday check-ins, not even for the sales, but it works for us. I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't work on us. I've talked to a couple of my friends in the other.
I'm sorry, you said that you don't have weekly check-ins, or you do?
We don't do weekly check-ins. Yeah.
So how do you do your check-ins, and how do you manage?
We are flexible about it. I mean, because everything is driven by the innovation, the projects that you do. So then when do you do it, and those are mutually agreed. So if you have those things in mind already, right? You've already set those things. You can monitor that. I don't have to, like the example that Adrian gave, sounds horrendous to me. People log in and then the boss. But I do know that some people that I coach or counsel or whatever, telling me that they have that kind of situations in their organizations.
Name them.
Rather not. Yeah. I think then the critical question actually as we go is that the leadership is secure, that they have great ideas and they're going to lead the organization, and then they create the environment that handles that. And in that context, for me, one other comment I wanted to make is that, I mean, the title of this session is The Future of Hybrid Workforce. But the future of hybrid is already now. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. It is. And that's kind of the interesting thing, right? Is that, even among, this conversation, we have very different experiences in what we're seeing, and we're all responding very differently. And I'm just curious, like, we think about trust, and I think that trust in terms of culture is a big part of this conversation. What are your thoughts around how do you actually trust, without, micromanaging the person? And I'm playing devil's advocate here, but how do you foster trust when you've never met the person? Maybe you don't know what they're working on, if they are literally on the beach drinking Mai Tais or, watching Netflix all day. How do you know they're doing stuff?
So Jan, can I just jump in with?
Oh yes, of course, Tushar. Yeah.
Thanks. I think this conversation just brought to my mind, change management and the use of technology as well, right? How to make our stakeholders, I'm going to use the word stakeholders because we've got employees on top and those that work with us as well, right? So technology, and in fact, this just brings me to a conversation I was having with somebody today about facial recognition technology, and how we've become so habituated to have video conferencing as a mean, right? So there are technologies out there that can actually use the facial recognition to get a little bit more of an insight on the psychology of our fellow conferencing partners. Just to get a sense and a check-in on if everything is all right from an emotional, psychological point of view, which is something that would be very normal. Just walk across to the water cooler or grab a coffee, and you can just say hi and check in with somebody physically, right? So in the absence of that physical interaction, next best thing is using technology, because change management is something that we've already adapted. So there's softwares that can read my face and get a sense, from the face, the language, the tonality of what I'm saying. And I think, to both Prakash and Adrian's point of, how do we, in yours, and I think across it's Skanda as well, how do we manage data and trust, right? With this whole technology and without being intrusive, right? Technology, data entry, single source of truth, and how we work more with objective, quantifiable data versus a lot of the subjectivity that we're so used to having, when we used to have a lot of face-to-face meetings, right?
Absolutely.
So I just
no, absolutely, and I love that. Yeah. Because if you're connecting kind of what we're talking about too, it's how do you really build trust-based culture? And also technology is not our enemy, right? So how do we leverage technology, which is your point, in order to enhance the employee work, the hybrid work experience? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's an interesting topic, right? And is because technology can be used, because technology is just neutral. It's how we use it, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of that. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts, and I'll open it up to the panel around the use of technology to build trust and also emotional and mental check-ins, because that has been an issue, and it's increasing in importance in terms of, especially with this hybrid, where people who are not used to working in this way are struggling, right?
Yeah, I think some thoughts from my side. There will be technologies, and I mean, we are the company that I work in is in the field of, for example, we are also already going to certain areas, quantum computing, AI. We are actually in the field of 6G right now, already some research in certain areas. So the reality of the hybrid workforce is going to be there, because that means the virtual experience of actually meeting someone is going to be made more actual in the very near future. It's going to happen. In fact, yesterday, I think the minister actually, I think in the Channel News Asia, our minister was actually doing that, actually giving a virtual reality, sort of experience. And, I think she was in Singtel or somewhere else and stuff like that. So this is a reality which we may not like, especially for those who are not comfortable with change, that you are going to have to face, because these will become predominant. That means what we are doing right now may be done in an even more intimate way, potentially. Then comes the point that Tushar was mentioning, which personally for me, I would be very uncomfortable to do that, which is monitoring technologies. But in certain countries, they do that right at the point when you enter the country. Previously, it was this, now it was this and this facial recognition in a certain country, right? So, but, and if you do that in certain situations, it really intrudes into a person's psychology, because if you have an AI now and you're having a conversation and the guy is like, then you say, I'm fine, because you feel like just saying you're fine, and someone says, I don't think you're fine. According to my AI analytics, you're quite pissed off with me. Oh my God, the whole psychology of conversation then is going to take into a dimension that's quite worrying, honestly. But I think, that will be quite interesting for certain regimes to have, isn't it? So I'm a bit worried about it. But certain aspects of the technology is a reality, which means, I think, in a number of areas, for example, travel is going to be really affected by it, because if you don't really have to travel, actually, because you're going to have an almost virtual reality experience with the person you're going to meet, then what is the point of that travel you need? Having said that, I love meeting people. I just discovered from a person I just confirmed, because I physically gave her a confirmation letter, and I was asking how is it feeling like, because she joined us in a very hybrid situation, and it's been 6 months, and I just still wanted to see her. And then we were talking about introverts, extroverts, and she said there's a word called ambivert, and she was saying, Prakash, you are probably an ambivert because you miss seeing people, but you know. So this, I think, are some of the aspects that I think are very interesting for me. Technology, the intrusion and the non-intrusion, and then the trust. Yeah, this is critical for us. From where I come from, trust is a big deal. I mean, for us, it's like, you want to do innovation related work. There must be a trust that the failure is okay. The failure in what we did is okay, because this much work you did in R&D, and then you failed. This much is already found, and then you can take this now to use, and then do some more coding in a different area, for example, just to give you.
Yeah, no, we can go definitely deeper on that. But before we go deeper on that, which is super interesting, I'd love to just hear from Skanda too around the intentional use of technology for building trust and engagement. I think you were alluding to it a little bit before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously there are two components. There's the tech piece, and there is the face-to-face piece, I like to say, right? You still will have to do certain things physically. I was just reading this interesting, someone said something like the office is the new offsite, right? So you use that as the place to come collaborate, maybe once in 6 months or whatever it is, right? Whatever works for your team. But I think the other piece is technology. And at the end of the day, if we were to build trust, if we were to build the right kind of atmosphere, we have to rely on technology. Now, when I say technology, I don't necessarily mean fancy tech that not necessarily everyone can afford. I'm talking about just relying on basic technology that's out there, that's affordable, that can help you in some of the crucial elements in building trust and in building a culture and a vibe, right? Right from maybe the employee onboarding, right? You have to re-envision the way you're bringing in your new employees. Prakash was just alluding to the fact that someone was hired in this hybrid form, and it's so much more crucial that you now start re-looking at all of this and figuring out what's the best way to, involve technology. And similarly, I would say even engagement and communication, right? There are so many different tools out there, but what's the best way to involve the whole team? What's the best way to build a certain community, a sense of community, so to speak? And I think these are the two main pain points that I come across when I'm talking to clients. That's really what they're trying to address, and that's really where Nobi also comes in, and we help them by providing them with this really cool and easy to use solution to build an onboarding program that's not just remote. It involves the entire team. So there's a strong community element to it. There's a strong application element to it. So you're not just sitting and learning things, you're doing things as well. And similarly on the engagement and communication front as well. We've had clients who've come up with innovative solutions to deal with the pandemic and to deal with everyone being at home and maybe not being in the best moods. So we've had clients use Nobi for things like, they call it the weekly mood meeting, where they—
I love that, by the way. I love that.
where they essentially engage with the entire team on a weekly basis and just uplift the entire environment. And there is that data element here as well. I know it is a bit of a controversial element, but I think data definitely helps some functions, especially to find out how your team is doing, to find out how engaged they are and how this kind of enablement is truly helping them or not. So yeah, that's been my experience.
No, I think that's really interesting. I love that. The office is going to be the new offsite. I'm going to quote you on that. And I think it's interesting, what you're talking about too around, data. And I think with technology, it is really about what is the intention of that collection of data? Are we collecting the data to monitor you? Because I think we have to trust our employees to know the difference. Or are you collecting data because you care about them and you want to create the best employee experience for them? And there is a vast difference, right? I think Tushar, you want to add something here?
Yeah, I should do. In fact, just wanted to, just make a quick point, right? So when I talk about technology, it has to be with a buy-in or a consent, right? It has to be positioned in such a way that it's non-intrusive and always to help the, the employee or stakeholder, because if we position it as a productivity enhancing tool, as a tool for welfare, it might be well received, and they'll feel comfortable about it, right? Yeah. So today, as we do virtual meetings online, most of the time it's being recorded, and I've attended literally hundreds, right? But I've never seen a situation where the meeting's been called off because somebody objected to a recording, because they understand the value and the need for it, right? So positioning sometimes
what's really the why, helps. Right? What's the why behind it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Adrian, do you have anything to add? Because I know you deal with this a lot as well.
I think it's like I said, I think it's quite prevalent in this space right now from what the examples that you have shared earlier on, and I think it's just a process that everyone fortunately, unfortunately, have to go through to understand what works and what doesn't work for them.
Yeah. And I think on that, we have actually a lot of questions coming in now. So I think what I'm going to do is open up the floor, because we have so many questions here, and just make sure we address some of those questions. I think, Adrian, you're mentioning that it's a process we all have to go through. And, Prakash, you've also mentioned it as well. And also Skanda. So, how can leaders and supervisors manage this remote team successfully? We have a combination of ways of working. And, Skanda, how do you manage? You have now teams that are in different countries, and you have new people joining. So how do you manage, and I'm going to add another word here to the question, but how do you manage and inspire and engage in this hybrid remote environment? Anyone want to start?
I'll be happy to start, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So actually, when I joined IHRP, I'm just supposed to be a solo contributor. But because I have to step into another department, so I suddenly inherited a team. And right now I have a team of 5. So, and overnight, beyond just managing myself, I need to manage other people as well. So I think the first and foremost is really to do your own reading and research on what are some things that work for other people that you can try to localize. Personally, I've actually attended a course on how to thrive in the world of remote. And in fact, this is not just a course, but it's also a book by a guy named Robert Glazer. You can actually Google and search for it. I haven't started on the book yet because, well, I have too many books. And the other thing is, I think it's really to give very clear instruction. Instead of just telling, I realized it would make more sense to show them how it's done. And of course, that you may think in your head, then doesn't that mean I'll constantly be in back-to-back meeting because I just have to be sitting there like a doctor waiting for patients to come in? No, that is not the case, because in today's context, you can easily use asynchronous video recording platform to record whatever you need to show them and send them the link. So they don't have to see it instantaneously. They can see it later, tomorrow, next week, whenever it is. So personally, I use something called Loom to record it down. And but beyond that, if it's just words, it's really very specific instruction. And I think something that leaders and managers need to understand as well is whatever you want your people to do, especially if it's a new endeavor, you have to do it first. Gone are the days where managers can stand or sit in their throne on the ivory tower, pointing down and give instruction, expecting people to receive it and to know what to do. I think those days are long gone now. So unless you have personally rolled up your sleeve, been there, done that, got a t-shirt, even though your people may reluctantly accept your instruction, they are not going to put in their best effort. So by showing them how to do it, I think it's very important. And lastly, I think given the kind of situation we are all in, and also bearing in mind, work from home and even work from office works very differently, which is why you see a lot of MDs, a lot of senior managers, just come back to office. It's okay. What are you so concerned about? Of course, it's okay for the senior manager. He is sitting in his corner office No one is in the office. He can shut the door and take off his mask. Everyone outside on the hot desk have to put on the mask, cannot even get at 1 meter safe distancing. So I think the lack of empathy is very prevalent because of this hybrid situation. So if you don't have an empathetic ear, honestly, I do not know how to teach you to do so, but it's very important you listen to your people and see the kind of situation that they're faced with. So don't hide in your corner office, come out and work with them. And lastly is, given how bad the situation can be for many people, don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly speaking, 20 years, 50 years down the road, when you're lying in your deathbed, what do you want your staff to talk about you? That guy is a tough leader. That guy can really dish out some instruction. No, you want them to tell people, oh, that is a father figure. I really learned so much. I'm so motivated. I changed my career path.
Or mother too, right?
Yeah, or mother too. So sorry. So I think those are things that a leader have to really take note of, and that may help in many instances to provide a better collaborative environment.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing, Adrian. I think I totally agree with you around kind of not taking yourself seriously, but also recognizing that we're all on this journey. No one has ever gone through this kind of a global pandemic situation. No one is an expert, right? So I think starting with that fact, I think also helps us to be open to listening and to learning, right? That no one knows the answers. We're not going to get it perfectly right, and having grace for ourselves and our teams to make mistakes along the way. And I know, Prakash, you mentioned the whole thing about mistakes too, which is so important. And in that whole conversation then of being open, we're trying to be collaborative, we're trying to learn, we still have to manage performance. And there are 2 questions, in the chat about performance. So, I would love to get your thoughts. How do you manage performance individually or team in this hybrid environment? Any thoughts?
I think this is a very, very good question. I think for leaders, especially right now, if you read any reports for leaders, what are the biggest, and most people, what are the biggest, if you're a team leader or any kind of appointment, what is your biggest, scariest thing to do? It's always the presentations or to do performance reviews, right? But the whole idea of performance reviews has been, people have been asking for a review of the performance review for a long time, not to have this traditional once a year dialogue kind of stuff, where then it becomes the most painful one. And now if you were in a remote situation, it's going to be even tougher because you're not able to understand how they feel, understand what they feel about their achievements or not, and all of those things. So I would say, because I want to hear the question a little bit more, but this is a big challenge right now, which is because performance review purely based on results is one thing, right? Because that is what were you told to do, and what about other aspects of it, which is the, for example, the organizational values or whatever that you wanted to do, reflection of your deeds and all of that. It can be done. So I'll tell you what my thought. It can be done on remotes and all that. But here's the big one. If you want to do all of that, the biggest thing that needs to be done right now, and we have been doing it for the last 1 year, is actually a reskilling of the management, reskilling of the workforce in many of these areas that we used to do in a certain way. Because if you only thought of doing it this way, it's not going to work when you do it in the remote way. So reskilling, for example, customer training, reskilling, employee communications, everything needs a bit of relook into it. So we've been doing this now for 1 year, and I have a training and development team, or a learning and development team, and they've had the busiest year because we've been doing a lot of that in-house and with our customers, right? And people who train customers, for example, how do they do it? Absolutely. So this reskilling is a critical thing during this time, especially even you're talking about performance appraisals or reviews. How do you do this, and how do you do conversations from now on? It's a critical need that needs to be addressed. Yeah.
I love what you talked about, the difference, because when people talk about performance, they tend to think of it in terms of just the hard goals and outputs, which in some ways is easier to measure. Either you did it or you didn't. You were on time or you were off time. You hit your target or you missed it, right? But I think the softer side of what you're talking about is really quite interesting and a very important element. Skanda, what are your thoughts here on this? And especially around the whole reskilling piece too?
Yeah, I mean, I think culture plays a huge role. The buy-in from everyone in the management and across the length and breadth of the organization plays a huge role. And naturally, if everyone is bought in, then there is this mindset of, yes, we need to look at things differently. And I think agility plays a huge role as well, which is you try something. We're all learning here. So we try something, we see if it doesn't work, we have to switch and we have to move forward. So that's definitely something that is that's worked for us. We've never really felt like we were, subject matter experts in figuring this out. We've made constant changes, small changes, and we're finally reaching a place where we think we're doing things efficiently. I think the other thing also is just to come back to what Adrian was talking about. I think it's really important to set the tone as leaders. Whether you're doing performance management, whether you're also just trying to lead a hybrid team, you have to set the tone in terms of not just showing them how to work, but more importantly, showing empathy. Right? If you set the tone by showing empathy and acknowledging that different people work differently, and two people can go different routes to reach the same objective and the same goal, I think that's key. And if that's something that kind of permeates throughout the organization, it just gives everyone a far bigger, safer space to kind of function in. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I love that. In some ways, if you think about that, it's the level of personalization in how we work. So hybrid and COVID has encouraged us to be more personalized in allowing people to work differently. Because we definitely have some people who prefer to work in office, some who say, I have my awesome setup at home, but some, and something in between. So it's almost like, I guess, forcing us, right? Or catalyzing us to think about, hey, what is your work style? What's your preference? Do you like to come in? Do you not? And then adjusting your meetings, adjusting ways of working. So I think that's a really good point. There's a question here, which I think is super interesting, and I held it because I think it's a challenging one, around how is conflict management different for on-site versus remote and hybrid teams? So I think it goes back a bit to what Prakash was saying before about, the water cooler. I think what Tushar, right? The water cooler, you can see them, you can see the facial, see that they're upset. But online, you turn your camera off if you're upset, right? Or, what have you all experienced, seen, and how, and what are some good resolutions that have worked?
Maybe I want to say that is something that is a work in motion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really. I do a lot of this kind of work, not just in my company, but bringing people together. Because if you want to get great ideas going, there must be storming of ideas, and you must have a lot of that diversity in order for you to get some creativity going. And doing it this way, it's a process in motion, learning in motion. So I'm still, we are still researching on the best ways to do this. I mean,
what have you tried in the past? What have you tried?
We used to all just come together, and I mean, this isn't a joke, but everything gets settled in the evening with beer in a German company.
Well, how do you do that in a hybrid and in a remote environment?
Yeah. So now you're drinking different beers, so it may not work that same way, I suppose. No, but I think this is something that perhaps I would like to hear from the others, because you still want to use the technologies that are present but differently. For example, if you have a lot of things going on, if I want to answer the question of this, if you are talking about conflicts and if you're in a big meeting, I think it's important for the leader to facilitate a off meeting where the two people in conflict then can come together and you can facilitate it. Not to do it in a big way, because this is that may not be very nice and pleasant for the rest of the team, especially in Asia and especially inter-country. Different cultures have different ways of respecting boundaries. And so we need to understand this very importantly. So sometimes the best thing to do is to say, I think there are some disagreements here or some divergent views. maybe we can, let's have this dialogue. We park this and we come back to this later on. You can come back and stuff like that, But these fundamental principles apply in normal conflict management, which you can bring here and adapt.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Quickly to just, I think Prakash mentioned reskilling. I think that plays a huge role here as well, in the sense that there are some skills that you need to develop to handle conflict management in this new environment, right? I think something as simple as being present and listening intently it's a different skill now, because it is. It's just a habit for us to look at our screens and always be doing something else. And so when you're probably having a conversation that's slightly sensitive and that you're dealing with a conflict, you have to essentially develop the skill of being 100% in there. I actually like something that Janet in the chat has shared about the same exact thing, which is it's really, really important to be fully present, non-judgmental, create a safe space. And I think that plays a huge role. So, I think it's on the managers as well as on the team to, develop these new skills, and then also have an environment where everyone's kind of helping each other, because one person or manager is not really, especially in the remote environment, is not going to be able to figure out what are the conflicts happening in different places. So if it's, if everyone's willing to help and it gets flagged and you do it at the right time, at the right level of communication, it's almost the same as things used to be before.
I think that's, and I just agree with both of you, and also Janet and many people in the chat group here as well who are agreeing. We talk a lot about these soft skills. We've been talking about these soft skills development for donkey years, or we talk about future skills by the World Economic Forum, and there are all these soft skills around communications, collaboration, empathy. So I think what's really interesting, and not to say that COVID is good, but there are always some positives in it that come out of every situation, is there's now this great opportunity to develop and have to practice these skills, because we don't have a lot of the other techniques or tools, and resources. We can't go grab that beer, right, and then just forget about it and get drunk over, whatever it is, pat each other on the back, or we have to rely now on a lot more softer skills because of the limited, I would say, capacity, right, in environments. And it's interesting to see, like, how do people develop these softer skills, and how are they being intentional about not just assuming managers can all do it, right, if they've never done it before, but giving them the skills they need. Yeah, go ahead, Prakash.
Yeah, just one point I think that's very important is organizations have to look at their vision, mission, purpose, and then you see whether you can draw back into that. So if you're already in trouble, that's a different matter. In the case of our company, I think about 3 years back, we re-looked at everything that we did, and then we did culture building. We are very fortunate in the sense that when COVID struck, we had already did the culture building work that we did. I actually have a little fun one here. The Singapore version of it was this one: reliable, entrepreneurial, impactful, stuff like that. So if the culture is built, then when you have situations, you can go back and say, isn't this what we believe in? It's like you're talking about a great relationship you have with someone you care about. You go back to remembering the moments you romance or something, and you say, and you set up the basis of coming together. And then this empowers you in the situation that you are in. So this is a challenge if this was never done, because then you're going to have a challenge. I will just give you one example. In our case, our office in India, like many offices in India, were really affected when the COVID situation happened. If it was not us, it was the customers, And yet we had the best results that we have ever had in India. It was just amazing. I had colleagues whose parents were sick, or someone passed away, and many things. And yet we had the best. We try to understand this, and we spent some time having dialogues with our colleagues there. And I think it was that going back to what the culture building, it's been a powerful thing for them to say, okay, we still want to make it happen for us, because then we continue to exist, and then we can continue to provide for our people and the company and the family and whatnot, So I think this is a very critical thing beyond the skilling part. The other part,
absolutely.
What do you stand for? What are kind of foundations do you have? And if you didn't have it, right, it's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
never too late to start. Go ahead, Tushar.
Sorry. So no, just want to chime in, right? I think, it's absolutely, the need of the minute is really reskilling, upskilling, being more mindful, and recognize that, it's not going to be always about productivity, because if the employees actually, it can be a lot more detrimental to the organization if the employees leave. Right, and safety, security, confidence, instilling more of an employee workforce culture is ever so important today, because productivity, you're building productivity today, but what's more important is productivity for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
The old adage, right? If you take care of your people, the customers will come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's and that takes leaders who have that foresight and that insight and willing to invest, in the soft skills, hard skills, technologies, resources, right, that people need, which is really interesting. I'm conscious we have 2 more minutes left in terms of, we can talk, I think, for hours, because we're all experiencing this hybrid work. So I think we all have a point of view on it. But what if maybe I'll just ask each person to share some advice. We have, a ton of people here who've dialed in. And what's one piece of advice that you can give in order to kind of work towards building a really productive, engaged, values-based hybrid workforce? Anyone want to start?
I can start first. I think it's really about talking with people, and not just to find every opportunity to talk to them about work, but also to talk with them about how's their life, how are things. It's actually very similar to very good parenting advice. You don't just ask your kid every time they come home, how's your homework, how's school, go do your homework or not, got submit or not, got pass your paper or not. I mean, you don't need me to tell you, in the long run, you're not going to have a very good relationship with your kid. But instead, you should be like, so how's your day? Is it a good day, a bad day? Oh, your friend something happened to your friend. How was it? How do you feel? You saw something. Do you help that person? So I think these are small little things that you would want to ask your people. I would try to find an opportunity to find out more about the things that my team member actually enjoy doing. And I even try to put in very, very frivolous things. I was telling them yesterday, hey, let's do a side bet. Which part of Singapore will be flooded? The loser will buy bubble tea for the winner. And I was telling them a few weeks ago, every Friday, let's take a picture of our lunch and put inside the chat group. So I've learned very early in my career that people connect at the personal level, not professional level. Like what Pakrash mentioned, over beer, over at a pub, everything will be done and dusted. And that's because you connected at a personal level. At a personal level, no matter how you quarrel with your family, your siblings, end of the day or overnight, everything is forgiven. But at work, we don't really have that. So you have to create those moments. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Totally agree.
Bounce off for what Tushar said, which is that if you don't engage the employees, number one, number two, if you don't provide the flexibility, when things are good, you're not going to have them anymore, because they will have more choices in their hands. So if you build it up, especially I think if I were to just quote Jim Collins, and he says very controversially, he says, people are not your most important asset, the right people are. Bring the right people into the bus and decide where you want to go, right? So you may lose the right people you have if you do not give them the right environment and flexibility to thrive, right? So this is really critical.
Absolutely.
Quick one from me. I think 3 things, right? One is it's really, really extra important now to build authentic connections from the get-go. So whatever skills you need in order to develop those authentic connections, you have to focus on that. I think with what's happening now, it's even more important. The second piece is working collaboratively, constantly involving the entire team, and not just this is not just working within a team, but also cross-functionally. It's even more important to constantly deal with everyone in the organization. And I think the last one is, while we're talking about all the challenges, it's also important to try and realize the true benefits of hybrid workforce. So I think one big benefit is proximity to talent. You now have access to a huge talent pool. So look at your hiring practices, maybe look at different ways to bring in people from different areas. And I think that's definitely something you'd want to look at as well.
Oh, love it. Absolutely. Tushar?
Sure. Thanks, Tuyang. So, I just wrote down two things, right? Reach out and be reachable, right? I think it's important, employees need to know that you're available to them. And even if you don't have a history, it's okay to start learning, right? And work from anywhere is what I call it, not work from home or the office. So work from anywhere allows us as employees in our own capacity to actually have a lot more time for professional development. It's, you can view it in the positive, right? Some people say, oh, I'm slacking, I don't know if my manager's going to be upset. But if you're slacking and you're able to professionally develop, right? I think there's excellent opportunities. And, I'm not going to name names, but there are a lot of companies here that are putting out bite-sized learning packages. Right, employees, employers, senior management, and junior staff, it's okay to take that 10, 15, 20 minutes off and professionally develop. And what's even more better is that the employers and managers understand that and carve out 15, 20 minutes in a week to get everybody together and talk about their professional development journey for that week. We motivate each other, we learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, actually, I wrote a few quotes down from what everyone shared, but it's really learning together, growing together, working together, getting to know each other. Ultimately, I think the hybrid workforce, in some ways, if we can become more human in this process and leverage the technologies, the resources, the networks we have, and take the best of, it can be a really, really positive experience, and actually even a better experience for many, because it empowers people to work at their own pace, at their own place, in their own environment, which is a really important part of that. So we still have a lot to learn, and I wish we could have covered. The questions are fantastic. So obviously this is an ongoing dialogue that we should have. But I think as we enter the hybrid workforce, there are always pros and cons to every situation. I think my challenge to everyone who's joined today is, let's take a moment to think about for ourselves, what are two things we might try differently? I know I took some good ideas away from this conversation. I love the office is the new offsite, and I think even thinking about that and having team offsites and reach out and be reachable. The right people are your assets, right? And I think that's super important. And like Adrian said, it's kind of like, don't talk to them about things that are, that are human, that are about their lives and not just about work. And I like, your example of the parent, right, who always scolds children just based on their grades, and that opportunity to move beyond just performance, I think, and redefine performance, I think, are some critical things we talked about. I love this topic. I think we can talk about it for hours and hours, but I think given time, I'm conscious of that. I want to thank our panelists, and Siki for hosting this and co-hosting this event with us, and huge thanks to Deborah, Gary on the back end, who really made this whole thing happen. So I don't know where they are, if they're hiding, but thank you both so much. You guys are really the ones who made this all happen. So thank you all so much. Have an awesome day. Be safe wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And
thanks to the people who asked so many good questions. Thank you to everybody as well. And So Young, thank you for your hosting this for us, and also Tushar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Have a good one.